Geocachomaniacs.
Geo Gearheads.
You know, Daryl, it's absolutely mind-boggling to me why I don't have more women following me around because of my great dance moves. But that's not why we're here tonight. Tonight, we're here to talk about Geo Gearheads. It's the name of the podcast. We're here to talk about geocaching, and this is one of my favorite episodes. This is a randomized episode, and this is a dirty randomized episode because it's LXXX.
Also known as 50, which we'll do the math right this time.
No. 80.
What did I say?
50.
Oh,
L is 50.
Yes.
And then you got XXX, which is, you have to be over 30 to watch it.
I screwed it up right off the bat. It's going to be one of those shows. It's also the Pi Day show, which doesn't do any good for the people who are watching after the fact or listening to it after the fact, but happy Pi Day for everyone who's around and watching us live.
And if you eat pie, you're going to be more and more round. Because, you are what you eat, and pie are round. I don't know what the whole thing is, pie are square. No pie I make are square. My pie are round.
Okay, fine. But did you have pie at work today?
Not at work today, no.
Okay.
We got pie. We got a key lime pie last night. So we had some of it last night. We'll finish it off tonight. And my son went out. He, for one of his classes, he had to bring a round food item. I know in his nutrition class, they were going to make pancakes. So pancakes are round, thus pie-like. So he went out and got a German chocolate cake. And on Thursdays, he goes in very early. He's got a 0-hour class. And he texted me going, I forgot the cake. Can you bring it in? Sure, I'll bring it in. So I had a German chocolate cake in my hand, a nice round 8-inch German chocolate cake. And it's one of my favorites. I'll tell you that. So I wonder what happened. I think I'm still live, but I think Daryl may have dropped off. So there you go. I had an 8-inch German chocolate cake in my hand, and I didn't eat it. I delivered it whole and untouched. So, well. Anybody out there hear me? Tell me in the chat if you can hear me. Oh, I am live. Thank you very much for letting me know. GXM times 2. I wasn't exactly sure. Oh, here comes Daryl now. I didn't want just to ramble on. Power. You lost power.
Yep, and it came back, but we lost power. And even though I've got everything on like UPSs and whatnot, it did not come back correctly.
Nice. I don't have video from you yet, but I can hear you.
Camera. Yeah, the camera isn't even on.
Interesting.
So this is going to be an interesting show.
I kept rambling about German chocolate cake, but I wasn't sure if I was live or not, but people in the chat are still going on, and apparently I'm alive. You somehow got snapped by Thanos.
Something like that. Ooh, you know what? I think I actually lost, I think when it went out, it actually fried some hardware, which shouldn't be happening, but...
Like USB hardware?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I had that happen. You know what that is? That's expensive. Yeah, that's when I got a new camera, new audio interface, and all sorts of fun stuff. Yeah, that was an expensive power surge for me.
Yeah.
Now, Daryl, while you're figuring things out, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the show because, there's video. You are alive.
There's video, but it's the wrong camera. But video.
You're right. That's the camera on your iMac, isn't it?
No, it's the C920 instead of the 910.
Okay, I was going to say it's a little brighter.
Yeah, it's a lot less sharp too. So that's why I typically don't use this one. Is it doesn't perform as well. So I have to play around with it a little bit to get it to work usually.
Okay, there. Now it looks better. Hey, I'm going to go ahead and read GPS World's Happy Pi Day article.
Sounds like a good plan.
And it starts off 3.1415926, or what we know as pi, every nerd's favorite number. It's the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter in conventional or Euclidean space. We use it, for example, to convert angles measured in radians to degrees. That's pi radians equals 180 degrees. Pi is an irrational number. I thought that too, because I have a trouble remembering it past what I just read you there. Which means that its value cannot be expressed exactly as a fraction m over n, where m and n are integers. Consequently, its decimal representation never ends or repeats. Thus, the difficulty to memorize pi. And, never ends or repeats. That's the line I should be reading from. But we sometimes use an easily remembered fraction, such as 22 over 7, to get an approximate value, in this case, 3.14. But if we compute more digits with this fraction, we get 3.1428571. Clearly an incorrect result. A better way to remember the pi to 8 digits is to count the number of letters in each word of the mnemonic, "May I have a large container of coffee?" Wow, I've never done that one before. 3.1415 well, no, I lost it. 3.1415926. Yeah, that may I have a large container of coffee. Huh. I learned something new, Daryl. In computations related to GPS, how many digits of pi should be used? Well, it depends. If you're developing your own algorithms and software for modeling GPS observations or determining precise orbits for the satellites, you'll likely need pi to 16 digits for double precision floating point calculations. It would be a mistake to use pi to this precision in computing the position of a satellite from the broadcast ephemeris. These are words I don't normally use. Let's just state that I'm not Limax. To Limax, this is normal. This is probably what he talks about in the morning in the shower. But for me, it's a bit of a stretch. The GPS, we're putting people to sleep. The GPS interface specification document, that's the IS GPS-200, specifies a 14-digit value for pi. That's 3.1415265358898 in the satellite coordinate computation. Using fewer or more digits the resulting satellite coordination will not be as accurate.
Well, I thought that was kind of appropriate given today's date, but there is
it's Pi Day. You got to know why we like pi.
Yeah, there is a longer version of that, but it kind of relates pi to our favorite hobby of geocaching.
If we do a bonus episode tonight, should we just read digits of pi for 15, 20 minutes?
Don't worry, we're not going to do that, folks. No, we're not going to have a bonus show tonight because we just did a randomize show a couple of weeks ago, but we've got a whole bunch of stuff that we needed to go through this week.
Daryl, you just broke the whole illusion.
We did, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to the email from Hide Go Seek. And it says that you asked about LandMonkey, or you asked LandMonkey about using an AR experience that's not a geocache. And he found an alternative use for Metaverse by using it as a huge hint on one of the puzzle caches that people are having trouble solving. So if you look at his cache GC7NK5T, you'll find that one. And it is a pretty interesting application for Metaverse.
May I have a large container of coffee?
No.
Okay. Metaverse, during the show with LandMonkey, I logged in, created an account with Metaverse and followed along. And it really is quite easy to use. It's very object oriented, drag and drop, add this and that. And it really was quite simple to use. I was thinking, well, maybe I should squeeze in a I'm sorry, a AR cache before the deadline, but that didn't happen. But I thought, in one evening, you could pop one of these out and have something that's decent.
Yeah, and part of the problem is you'd have to already have that final location for the cache, which, if you didn't have it by the time we did the show, you probably weren't going to be able to get that published in time.
Yeah, maybe.
It's not a matter of getting the metaverse set up and done. It's a matter of getting the location and setting up the container and getting it approved in time. So,
okay.
We should have probably done that a little earlier, but hopefully we'll bring him back at some point in the near future.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And could you use it even after after everything's grandfathered in a cache?
They're using it as a hint here. So I think as long as you have it as an option, but you can solve it without, you're probably in good shape.
Right. Because it makes a lot of sense to be able to do that. And there's other software I've had to download to find a cache. So
right. And they've done that kind of stuff with where he goes too.
Exactly.
Not that people like it. It's kind of like a where I go hybrid then. But you could do like an AR hybrid. So, check with your reviewer, but I have the feeling that you could probably do something like that.
Exactly. Well, we've got more email feedback. This one's from our good friend, the Wooden Radio. And it starts off with, yes, already you got you're wrong message. GPSRs do not talk to the satellites, they listen.
Yeah, this is in regards to our last randomized show, and that was just riddled with problems, and we're going to talk about another one in a minute. But yeah, the GPSRs do not talk to the satellites. They only listen. The Galileo system does have two-way, but your little handheld receivers are one-way, I believe.
Right.
I don't think that that's a limitation of the technology. I think that's a limitation of the available products.
And I probably said they talk to. We have problems talking to the satellites. And yes, I realize they do listen. I use the term talk to refer to any sort of communication. Yes, you're right. They listen to the satellites.
Yeah.
And you know what? I should be more accurate.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you, Wooden Radio.
It is an
I will be.
Distinction.
It is. It really is.
So it's not just being pedantic. It's
a cell phone actually talks. It
to
has
the cell network.
Yeah, to the cell network. It has two-way communications. Where
you can't talk to GLONASS and to GPSR because they're one way. Those satellites are transmit only.
Right. So so the GPR section, you're right. There's multiple radios in a cell phone. So the cell radio, the Bluetooth radio are both two-way communications.
And Wi-Fi.
GPS and Wi-Fi, thank you. The GPS and the GLONASS are one-way radios.
As is the FM radio if you happen to have one of those.
There you go. The FM radio is a great example.
Yeah.
Of how one-way communication works. I mean, we all understand how radios work. Radio in your car, AM or FM. GPS is much the same way, but the information is different.
GSM times 2, I think, is going to get in trouble here. You use talk like I talked to my wife when she was telling me about a shopping trip.
Bingo. Exactly. Yes. There was no talking involved. It was all listening.
Oh, that's awesome. All right.
I think of, boy, I'm sorry. My brain is still not working. I had too many hours last week. And Frasier, I'm listening.
Oh, yes. Man. Okay. Dune Buddy also emailed, I've been able to calculate the numerical difference for the April 6th week rollover. The difference is V, as in 5. You referred to this week's randomize as number 74, LXXIV. However, it is listed as LXXIV or AX, which is 79. I looked back at the last randomize show, and it was LXXI, or sorry, VIII or 78. Therefore, the difference between what you wrote and what you said is 5. I attribute this to the rollover.
Well, it was an extra bit, and we didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah, it was, we needed extra sleep and we didn't get it.
Yeah. Silly government control over our lives, taking an hour of sleep.
Well, that was this week. We didn't have that excuse last 2 weeks ago.
I still claim it.
Yeah,
all year long.
Apparently, everyone has been so rough at the office this week, dealing with it.
Yeah,
and not just my office. All of the offices seem to be having problems coping with it this time.
Interesting. I hear that Washington State is working on legislation to not do the time changes anymore. Now, that was terribly said, but you understand. We will no longer observe daylight saving time.
Interesting.
That's what I wanted to say.
Because if I remember the way that the Californian bill or referendum, whatever it was that just passed back in October, I think it was, or November. It was probably November, because that would actually be an election day. Mm-hmm. But theirs was to stay in daylight saving time. So they rolled into daylight savings time this time, and they're not going to roll back to standard time, if I understand it correctly.
Well, I don't remember which way it's going to be, but we're not going to be changing the clocks on a regular basis.
And we're getting into a total rat hole here with the daylight saving time thing, but I hate the whole daylight saving time thing.
Mm-hmm. I do too.
Yeah. So GSM time 2 says in California we would only use daylight saving time. Tom Brotherman is saying that the switch came the same weekend as Texas Challenge. That really sucks.
Yeah. So I understand it when it was initially instituted, but now I don't agree with it anymore. Do I live by it? Sure. Do I complain about it? You better believe it.
Yeah. This is one of those things where we all have to do it, or we all have to not do it.
Right.
It makes it so tough. We had a lot of problems with like Indiana didn't abide by, or didn't observe daylight saving time. So every couple of months it would get messed up, and like X-Punk X was in Indiana.
Right. So I mean, it's one of those things that it's going to take years for this to work out. Even if, let's say, the state of Washington votes not to observe daylight saving time anymore, it's going to take years for software to catch up and say, oh, we need a new time zone. If you're in Washington, no daylight saving.
And if you're in California, only daylight saving.
Right. Or, whichever way it goes. But it's one of those that, so daylight saving is going to kick in and you've got to go set everything back.
Yep. So I really wish we could just get rid of daylight saving across the board.
Mm-hmm.
But I really don't remember it ever being nearly the problem it was until the Bush administration expanded it. And the reason they had done that was Australia had only like 2 or 3 years earlier done that and saw a huge drop in energy usage. So this was the Bush administration's way of doing something environmental, and it backfired. And I want to say, and had I known we were talking about it, I would have tried to look this up, but I want to say that the numbers that they were floating around was that first year we used 23% more energy because of the time change early than over the year before.
Interesting.
So I think that was year over year, which isn't something that you could probably really take as, representative, because you probably have to, adjust numbers, but they may have done that too. And I just don't remember.
Well, I remember I had a few hardware systems that, knew what time daylight saving was supposed to happen, start and stop. And when it was changed, it, screwed everything up. So we would go and set it a couple of weeks, when it was supposed to go, it would change itself back. And it was like, it's just a headache.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was not a good situation, and everything got messed up. And, that's probably part of the reason for the extra expenditure of energy is all of the people who had to go to work extra early to make sure stuff, or go home extra late, making sure that stuff didn't get hosed. And I know there were some major repercussions on some of the financial systems, not at the national level, but I seem to remember someone had problems with their payroll that didn't get processed that week because the systems didn't roll over well. Be nice to say that, there you go. Hawaii, besides having good weather all the time, does not change the time, which is very true. And I attribute that to being closer to the equator too. Yeah, because they don't have the shifts in the sunrise and sunset that we have in the more extreme, the higher or lower latitudes.
We're extreme. I need an echo effect on that one, but I don't have it.
Yeah, I was going to say, now we have to define what extreme is.
Michigan and Washington.
Well, let's say anything over 75 degrees.
When we look at, up to 6 hours difference of daylight in a year, when in the winter we can come home at 4 o'clock and it's dark, and in the summer it can be light until 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's some change there.
Absolutely, there is. All right, so let's get back to the week rollover stuff. And Shriver actually introduced or actually released some guidelines. Do you want to check out that article?
Well, I have to, because you put my name in front of it.
Haha.
And it's a long one. Here we go. I'm probably going to bore people. So at this point, go ahead and start looking up the digits of pi to entertain yourself.
Or calculating them yourselves.
There you go. GPS World, the Shriver Air Force Base, releases GPS week number rollover guidelines. The 50th Space Wing. Isn't that a cool name?
I still love that. I want to work there.
I want to work for the Space Wing. The Public Affairs Office of the 50th Space Wing of Shriver Air Force Base established and posted guidelines known as the Interface Specification GPS-200 or the IS-GPS-200. For receiver manufacturers to ensure continued capability during the GPS week number rollover on coordinated universal time derived from GPS devices. Tracking with me so far?
I am.
Okay. According to the Shriver Air Force Base, users should be aware of the upcoming GPS week number rollover as it impacts receivers that are not manufactured in compliance with IS-GPS-200 specs. The GPS week number count began midnight, January 5th, 1980. Since then, the count has been incremented by 1 week, and years later, broadcast as part of the GPS message. One of the GPS week number fields in the legacy navigation messages counts from 0 to 1,023 weeks. At the completion of every 1,024 GPS weeks, the field rolls over from 1,023 to 0 and starts counting again. So that's why we're having all these problems, right? So absolutely. If your receiver doesn't know how to deal with that extra digit, then it's going to go back thinking it's January 5th, 1980.
Yeah, well, it's not necessarily an extra digit. It's rolling over to 0, counting in hex.
You're right. It's not a 14 digit.
Well, it's not counting, I guess, technically in hex, but yeah.
Right. We appreciate the 4 billion people around the world who use GPS signals on a daily basis. Think about that. How many times do you use GPS?
Oh, I think we missed part of this because we didn't talk about the first occurrence of the rollover.
Okay, I'll read it. The first occurrence took place in the evening of August 21st, 1999, and the message field rolled over to 0 at midnight GPS time. The next similar GPS week rollover is set to take place April 6th, which is coming up.
Well, I think this is significant for us because at that point, very few people had the handheld receivers. Very few people had car units. So it really didn't impact consumers very much.
Right. And there was no geocaching at that time.
Yeah, it was before selective availability had been disabled.
I can't speak. GSM
times two. Yes.
Do we really think that this is going to cause us any problems with our GPS units? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think with any modern GPS unit it's going to. If you've got something, from the early 2000s, perhaps.
Well, I was going to say that it's probably dependent on your GPS more than anything else. If you have a GPS from someone who's not been supporting it for the last couple of years, then you're very likely to have a problem with it. If you have a newer unit that's still getting firmware updates, you're probably fine. Just make sure to get those firmware updates loaded before April 6th.
Right. So Shriver Air Force Base goes on to say, we appreciate the 4 billion people around the world who use GPS signals on a daily basis, which is why we are transparent in providing detailed guidance on the use for compatibility, says Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Toth, the 2nd Space Operations Squadron Commander. By the way, Toth was the name of my elementary principal.
I thought it was one of the Star Wars characters.
No, that was one of the planets. They were on the ice world of Toth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's how I got confused.
Yeah, I know. It's easy to get confused. Civic GPS users are encouraged to submit reports of GPS problems to the Coast Guard Navigation Center. You notice it's not the Shriver Air Force Base. They don't want to hear about it. Send it to the Coast Guard, because what else does the Coast Guard do? That wasn't in the article. I just ad-libbed that.
I was going to say, are they going to do like a GPS recycling program for all the ones that don't work?
The Coast Guard now hates us. Civil aviation users are encouraged to report GPS anomalies to the Federal Aviation Administration, and military users should contact the GPS Operations Center.
Well, and that does make sense. So, civil is going to the Coast Guard, aviation goes to the aviation, and, military actually talks to the military branch that handles it.
Well, and really, for me, the first use of GPS I heard of was in boating.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of the common use was actually for fish finders.
Mm-hmm.
They did it as navigation as well, but, you had the fish finder that could remember where you saw that school of fish that last time.
Exactly. Michael in the chat says I might have made a mistake. The planet was Hoth, not Toth.
And maybe that was the moon.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Toth was the 3rd moon around the planet of Hoth.
Yikes. We're going to get emails, I think.
Send your emails to the Shriver Air Force Base, courtesy of the 50th Space Wing Public Affairs Office.
Yeah. But I do want to hear from people if they have units that don't work or that get messed up. So, if you have a unit that isn't working right on April 7th, let us know. Email geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com, and we'll try to compile a list of those. And I have the feeling, in all honesty, we're not going to see any of them.
And contact the FAA.
No. Contact the Coast Guard. No, you can only contact the FAA if you're flying your GPS.
That's right. You're right. Coast Guard. GSM times 2 says, I'm calling BS.
I think on us, not on the week rollover.
I'm thinking he's saying on the week rollover that it's really not going to affect any of the GPS. And I don't know if it will. I really don't think any of us with Jarman units are going to have the problem. I would be interested in this fellow if this is going to have any impact.
Yeah, those older ones, the ones pre-USB, I would say probably are going to have a problem. Because I don't know the last time I've seen an update for any of my older Magellans the what's it called? GSM time suit. No, on the moon Roth.
It was the Roth moon, yes. Isn't the Roth an IRA? Anyway,
Yes, it is.
I'm going to have to put some batteries
now
in
we're talking about celestial investments.
Ooh, it's out of this world. I'm going to have to put some batteries in this and let it sit outside for a week and a half to get a reading again. Because it takes a long time for this to get the, I want to say the horoscope. That's not it.
Almanac.
The almanac information. It could be a horoscope because it's guessing at this point.
It's more like a horror movie.
Yeah. But yeah, I remember that even when those were, just a few years old, I would put them outside. I was teaching a GPS class for a Sunday school, and it took an hour for them to find enough satellites to know where they were.
Let's move on to Galileo, though, mostly because I wanted a story with a lot of funny and hard to pronounce words.
Galileo Figaro.
No, Galileo Service Center operations transferred to SpaceOpal, which I'm sure isn't how it's actually supposed to be pronounced. Maybe it's Space Opal.
I like Space Opal.
I like Space Opal. I thought that sounded fun.
Spa Steeple. Spa Steeple.
But yeah, for those of you who can't see our show notes or haven't seen it already, it is the word space, all one word, by the way, the word space, OPAL. So Space Opal.
There, I put it in the chat just in case anybody wants to check around with Space Opal.
Yeah, maybe we'll get the research department who actually tells us how it's supposed to be pronounced. But GPS World had this article just yesterday, and I thought it was appropriate because they're transferring the in-depth troubleshooting and problem resolution of the GSE ground structure ground infrastructure. Okay, I can't talk either.
Sorry, Daryl. I was contagious.
Yeah, I guess so. Transferred from the European GNSS agency, blah blah blah, to
SpaceOpal.
SpaceOpal.
This episode brought to you by SpaceOpal, your friend in orbit.
Well, no, they're on the ground.
Your friend when you're in orbit. Your SpaceOpal.
Wow. Okay. So they're doing. They've passed the maintenance handover review for level 2 and 3 maintenance of the GSC in this. Here's where I'm going to go really wrong because it's Spanish, which I'm just as bad as I am with German.
Torrejon.
I was going to say Torrejon de Ardoz, outside of Madrid, Spain. And SpaceOpal is a joint venture between DLR Gesellschaft,
you got me on that one.
für Rammerfurten Wagendun, GFR MBH.
Hold on. I'm copying these and putting it in the show notes. You guys, you think if let us know if we're so bad because, here's the words we're looking at.
All along in the
chat. Because, by the way, those seem to have the exact same number of letters.
they certainly look like they're the same length in the chat. But don't forget that the second one, the German one, doesn't have the location in it. It's just the full name.
That's right.
So it is a longer one.
That's true. And, you take a German word and where they could describe things, in smaller words. No, we're going to take 7 or 8 small words, put them together and come up with something totally impronounceable.
Anyway, so the GSC provides the single interface between the Galileo system and the users of the Galileo Open Service and the Galileo Commercial Service. So that's kind of where we were going before, is you have the open service, that's the transmit only, and the commercial service is a two-way. So that's the one that allows you to send your location and some messaging, which I think if they're doing what they had talked about, German is easier to speak after a few beers. Thank you, Tom Brotherman.
Good German beer, and you can speak German.
Anyway, the messages that are coming back are like, okay distress messages like maydays for I think they do mechanical, I think they have fire and a couple of other ones. So it's like predefined as I understand it. It's not like hey, I'm on my way home, put the kettle on or whatever. It's predefined. It's not like a
Popping
big
home for a
payload.
spot of tea.
Yeah, the whole point of the two-way is for some basic messaging. So anyone at sea, anyone in the air will transmit their current position, the trajectory, all that kind of stuff, along with an okay or problem message for tracking an emergency. So, you hit that button, it's going to immediately say, hey, mayday, mayday, here's where I am, and set off the search and rescue ASAP. And the big talk with that Malaysian flight that went missing was if we had Galileo up and running and the plane had been equipped with it, we would have known exactly where it was. And, well, not exactly, but, we would have known exactly where they ran into the problem and where it disappeared, basically.
We would have more information on its whereabouts than we do now.
Right. And we had to go through all kinds of convoluted stuff to get there. So it's a great thing all the way around. And really, the last time I heard much talk about it, there was mostly excitement in the maritime industry, not so much in the aviation, because we do have things like the wireless internet service that allows for satellite communication already anyhow. And even though it's not as as good as we'd like for this kind of stuff, at least there's something. And most of the time, there's nothing for mariners to do that.
Well, unless you're talking the Mariners baseball team.
Yeah, but they're not usually stuck outside of cell phone service.
No.
Usually.
Oh, sorry, folks. Baseball season's about to start. Well,
you're apologizing for baseball season?
Well, the Mariners usually start off well this time of year, then we have to apologize later.
Oh, okay. So why don't you hold your apologies until it's actually needed?
Okay. So I'm not apologizing.
No, don't apologize yet.
Oh, we have another email. Is it okay if I go on?
Yeah. We actually have two different emails from this one person. So let's read the first one first.
First one comes from, well, I'm going to say IN as in Indiana, Daryl.
That is correct.
Or it looks like in Daryl, but that's not the way we're going with it. Just updating you on my progress with the puzzle box that Bounce sent the Arduino sketch. I've got the prototype working. I only need to add a 10K potentiometer to control the contrast, then put the case together. I've been giving some thought about your idea of a player versus player version. I can see it being done, maybe with a dual dispenser, one on each side.
And this is actually kind of my concept, and I don't know if he wrote this before or after we talked about it. Probably after, because I'm not sure that I actually talked about it on the show. But I did actually come up with a design for in concept. I haven't tested it or even drawn it out, but I've come up with a concept for a path tag dispenser that would work to dispense path tags up. That wouldn't be a launcher, though I think the launcher would still be fun.
Oh, the launcher is so much better. But I mean, if you repurpose something like a coin return off of a soda machine.
Well, the problem is that still has to come like out the front. So if you're putting it into something like one of these fold up cases, it wouldn't work so well. You need something that's independent of gravity.
Yeah.
So my thought is basically you have like the spring loaded tube with just like a little escapement at the front. So it's this pushing thing that comes up, and what you could do, it's just like a little cam that rotates to actuate it. But how cool would it be that when someone wins, you play some big dramatic music and like Zarathustra, 2001 Space Odyssey, as the coin comes rising up out of the top.
I was thinking more Price is Right. Do 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 do.
Yeah, but then that's more for like the launcher.
Hmm.
I'm thinking just
then
a
it hits
very
you in the
slow
forehead.
rise.
Hmm. There's pills for that.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, I'm excited because we have a couple of the audience members who have really gotten into this and are at least getting the source code and looking at making their own.
Mhm.
So I'm hoping to hear some stories, and we're going to have Bounce on again soon. I haven't gotten the scheduling done, but next time he's on, he's probably going to be talking about lab caches and the adventure labs. So different topic, but we'll have to bring him.
Bounce said the sound would be easy. Just add an if statement.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No problem. It's just a matter of getting everything timed out well.
Mm-hmm. So, Indiana Daryl goes on to say, I've just ordered a Prusa i3 tonight, thanks to the reviews of 3D printers on episode 363, 3D Printing 7. That show, along with the reviews in Make magazine, pointed me in the direction instead of going with the $200 to $300 route. Now to wait by the mailbox.
So yeah, I'm also excited that we've got so many people getting into the 3D printing. I really need to do that again, and really the i3 is the one that I want to get as well. But I ended up with this cheap Delta bot that I still haven't even really powered up. I powered it on. I haven't loaded any filament. Doesn't work if you don't do that.
So you don't even know if the print head heats up.
No, I don't. I have not touched it at all. But it is such a cool little toy, and that's what that one was intended to be. But I haven't even had the time to do that.
Daryl, you got to get your priorities right. This work is taking all the time away from your hobbies.
I know. This is just getting insane.
Yeah. Hey, Tom in the chat says, we had adventure labs for the Texas Challenge. The app worked, but needed a few improvements.
You know, as we expected, it's still an early version of the app, and that's one of the reasons why they're doing the slow rollout of the adventure labs. I don't remember what they were saying, but it's something like only 250 people and organizations were going to get early access to the adventure labs for this first round of testing. But they're only rolling them out like 50 at a time. So there's going to probably be like 5 waves of adventure labs and adventure labs coming. So we'll see what it's like, but I'm excited because it's going to probably perform so much better than what we're used to from the web interface.
I think so. I never liked the web interface.
No, I thought it was to be applauded because they're trying to do something that's platform independent. However, that kind of stuff just always seems a little bit wonky. Yeah, the web was not really designed for doing location-based gaming. So the performance isn't really there as I think what's going on.
Well, maybe when the 5G rolls out.
I don't think that's the problem. I think it's the performance of the browser itself.
Yeah,
and, the
GPSR.
Right. And
see, the browser actually does talk with the GPSR. Now, the GPSR listens to the satellites.
Well, and I think part of the problem is that the browsers aren't designed for real-time updates of the location. So you're working around, the browser when it asks for a location, if I understand correctly, which, granted I might not be, but when you ask the browser for the location, it's getting just a single one-time here I am right now for things like, finding the closest, coffee shop. But if we're doing something like this, you have to do something more. Oh, and Tom Brotherman is saying that there were complaints from people who didn't have smartphones. And the common complaint was no road navigation, which
interesting,
absolutely makes sense. And that's something that I would think would be pretty easy if people actually, get vocal about it.
Now, Daryl, maybe I'm an elitist, But it's hard for me to imagine in 2019 people in geocaching without smartphones.
You know, yes, but I have run into so many people who really don't want the smartphone for a variety of reasons.
Well,
including some people who are still hanging on to like the old, I don't want to say bricks, but the really rugged flip phones and things like that, because they're just not trusting enough of a big slab of glass when they're out hiking.
that's true. And, you know, okay, I'll roll back my comment a bit. International travelers.
Yes.
You know, that's a pain. So if you don't have the right plan, if you can't get it, sometimes it's expensive. You know, I get you. Maybe you don't always have access to a smartphone or the data thereof. So,
well, you know what?
Sorry if I'm elitist.
And Tom Brotherman says he's laughing because he knows people with flip phones, and I do too. Not many of them, but they're out there, and they are seeming to make a comeback. Because there was a point about a year, maybe 2 ago, when it was almost impossible to find a flip phone. Now.
Yes.
There's like 4 or 5 that I was noticing on the Verizon site as I was activating service for someone recently.
I heard Razor's making a comeback.
The Razor is making a comeback, but if I recall, it is actually an Android phone. So it's like,
but is it a flip phone?
It is a flip phone with a small screen and the keypad down below. So it's, you know, top half is going to be the screen, if I remember, and the keypad is going to be the bottom half.
I thought they were a cool phone when they first came out.
Yeah, and you were wrong.
Well, yeah. No, at the time it was a cool phone.
Unless it gets too hot.
No. Well, yeah, and it cut off your ear.
Well, it just burned your ear. Anyway, all right. Why don't we wrap it up though? Because we are we have actually made it through all the feedback and topics, which I was a little afraid we weren't going to. But it's also at 50 minutes, so you know we kind of should.
And now, just to round out, so we get to a complete hour, I'm going to read 1,000 digits of pi. Here we go: 3.1415926. Well, no, I guess I won't.
I don't think I have enough water for that. Okay. All right. So check the Cachemaniacs website at cachemaniacs.com for more on the Geo Gearheads, including show notes for this and all of our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by emailing geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com or through social media. Your support helps keep the Cachemaniacs shows coming. Please consider becoming a patron through the link on our website to support the Cachemaniacs shows. Geo Gearheads is produced by Chris Suffenauer and Daryl Wanberg. This show is copyright 2019 by Daryl Wanberg. All rights reserved.
Cash with the Cachemaniacs.